Hey guys, tonight we drift off to a tropical island that looks like paradise on the surface but promises absolutely zero treasure, zero danger, and just enough mild inconvenience to keep you humble. You're standing under a blazing sun, sweat already making your sunscreen run into your eyes, and all you've got for company is a wonky backpack, a suspiciously silent tour guide, and the growing realization that this whole Caribbean treasure hunt vacation might have been oversold. Palms sway gently, a few seabirds scream overhead like they're mocking your optimism. The water sparkles too brightly, like it's trying to distract you from the fact that there's nothing of real interest under it. A few jagged rocks poke out in the distance, dramatic, sure, but not exactly hiding chests of doubloons. You probably won't survive this week without sunburn, bug bites, or at least one mild emotional breakdown. But hey, maybe that's part of the charm? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always cool to see who else is winding down with us around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're here because someone somewhere told you this island, unnamed, naturally, might have treasure. They were wrong, or they were lying, or maybe they just liked messing with tourists. The boat ride in was bumpy, the captain smelled like sardines and regret, and the one brochure you had disintegrated in the humidity before you even finished reading the title. There's no town, no welcome sign, not even a rum stand, just a dirt path that seems to lead into the thick jungle, with a half-faded sign that says, maybe turn back. You, of course, ignore it, because that's what main characters do. You trudge forward, each footstep sinking slightly in. The soft earth, mosquitoes, ancient, angry ones, form squadrons around your head. Your backpack shifts oddly. Maybe it knows what you're in for. Along the path, there's something half buried in the dirt. You pause. Is it treasure? No, it's a broken flip-flop. Size 11. Definitely not gold. You keep walking. Trees close in like they've got secrets. The humidity has personality now. It hugs you from all directions. You wipe your face with your shirt, but it's already soaked through. A lizard the size of a chipmunk darts across the trail and vanishes into a bush that looks like it might hiss at you if you get too close. Your brain starts making pirate noises. Not full sentences, just R and yo-ho-ho, and one weird squawk. You're not sure where it came from. It's either heat exhaustion or your inner child trying to stay awake. At the beach's edge, you pause again. The sand here is suspiciously flat. Like maybe, just maybe, something was buried here. You drop your pack and start digging with your hands, enthusiasm rising. Sand flies. Your nails get gritty. After 10 minutes, you've unearthed a half-crushed soda can, 2 seashells, and what might be a melted plastic dinosaur. Your first real discovery on this island. Disappointment is layered, like a parfait of poor life choices. You stand and brush yourself off. A breeze catches your shirt, and for a moment you almost forgive the island. The sky is postcard perfect, after all. A pelican flies past in that lazy, judgmental way pelicans have. You suspect it knows something you don't. Around noon, you sit under a palm tree. The shade is decent, and your body is about 40% sunscreen by this point, most of which has formed a slick shell across your face. You pull out a small book of pirate legends you brought for inspiration. The first story is about Henry Morgan, the infamous privateer who once sacked Panama and drank like he had something to prove. Historians still argue whether Morgan was a visionary leader or just a booze-fueled chaos machine with a penchant for setting things on fire. Either way, he found treasure. Real treasure. Unlike you, who at this point would settle for an unopened coconut and a functioning breeze. You hear a distant splash. Hope flares briefly, then dies. It's just a fish, or possibly a coconut falling into the surf. You make a mental note to find one and crack it open later. Surely it can't be that hard. But that will be a Monday problem. Right now, your stomach growls. You packed granola bars, the kind that pretend to be filling but are mostly birdseed and disappointment. You chew one slowly, like a sad squirrel, staring at the horizon and waiting for something interesting to happen. Nothing does. Even the birds seem bored. Late afternoon, you spot movement on a distant bluff. A man? Or a very athletic palm tree? You squint. It's hard to tell. Either way, you're too tired to chase after mysteries right now. Your feet hurt. Your soul hurts a little too. You lie back on the warm sand and let the sun lull you into a light doze. Your last thought before slipping under, maybe this whole no treasure thing is the point. Maybe it's about the journey. Or maybe you're just dehydrated and delusional. Either way, you'll try again tomorrow. Monday starts with a dream about treasure maps and dramatic lightning, followed by the rude awakening of a hermit crab scuttling over your foot. Nature's alarm clock. You sit up, brush off the sand, and realize your back is now shaped like a question mark. Sleeping on the beach seemed romantic last night. This morning, your spine files a complaint. Determined to actually do something, you remember your brilliant idea from yesterday. Find a coconut and crack it open for hydration. Easy, right? After all, coconuts are just nature's canteens. You spot one almost immediately, lying perfectly still under a palm tree, like it's waiting for you. That should have been your first warning. You pick it up, decent weight, promising slosh inside, and start looking for a sharp rock. 10 minutes pass. You find one. It shatters. So does your confidence. You switch to plan B, smashing the coconut against a bigger rock. You channel your inner pirate. You swing. The coconut bounces. It doesn't crack, but your pride does. You try again, this time with a dramatic grunt. Still nothing. You're now in a physical fight with a fruit. A ladybug watching nearby seems disappointed in your technique. Somewhere around attempt number 7, the coconut finally splits, slightly. You cheer. You also cut your hand. Nothing serious, just enough to make you look like a very unconvincing action hero. The inside of the coconut is dry, bone dry, like it was hollowed out by time, or possibly by a previous unlucky traveler with similar dreams. Historians still argue whether indigenous Caribbean people actually considered coconuts a reliable water source, or just a last resort. You're starting to lean toward the last resort camp, especially now that your only beverage is half a bottle of lukewarm sports drink with the label peeled off. The rest of the day devolves into a series of what you generously call resource-gathering missions. You collect sticks, for a fire maybe, or a vaguely artistic shelter no one asked for. You find a rusted spoon. Could be from an old sailor or just trash. Either way, you name it Captain Spoon and tuck it into your belt. You're going a little stir-crazy. By mid-afternoon, you decide to explore the jungle again. This time, you follow the path of least resistance, meaning wherever your legs take you while you're half distracted by a bird that sounds like a broken flute. The trail leads you past more palm trees, more rocks, more deceptive shadows that look like treasure chests but turn out to be creatively shaped termite mounds. Then something shiny. You freeze. A glimmer in the sand, partially covered. You rush over, heart thudding like this might finally be it. You dig fast like an archaeologist on a deadline. A corner appears. A metal edge. You yank it free. It's a rusted lunchbox.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, circa 1991.
Inside, there's a plastic spoon, an ancient juice box, and the fossilized remains of what was probably once a PB&J sandwich. Congratulations. You've discovered relics from the pre-Wi-Fi era. You laugh, partly at yourself, partly because the alternative is weeping under a tree. A breeze stirs the leaves like it's trying to comfort you, or mock you. It's hard to tell anymore. You sit down, defeated but not entirely broken. A crab shuffles by, pausing just long enough to judge you with its little black eyes. You offer it the juice box. It declines. The sun dips lower in the sky. You stare at the horizon again, hoping for ships, or maybe just a floating snack bar. Nothing appears. You think about real pirates, Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Bonnie. Did they ever waste whole days chasing coconuts and getting outsmarted by crabs? Probably not. Then again, historians still debate whether most pirate legends are actually based on real events or just highly dramatic sailor gossip. For all we know, Blackbeard could have spent half his days looking for his boots. Eventually, you make a weak camp with some sticks and leave. And a questionable tarp you found tangled in the trees. It smells like mildew and broken promises, but it's shelter. You eat your last granola bar. You tell yourself it has chocolate in it. It doesn't. The stars come out one by one, too beautiful for how dumb the day was. You lie back, listening to the waves and distant rustles in the bushes. Probably just lizards. Probably. You think about the coconut again, the one that refused to yield. You'll try again tomorrow, maybe with a different rock. Just before sleep takes you, you whisper to the stars. At least I still have Captain Spoon. You wake up Tuesday morning to the soothing sound of something snorting near your ear. Not the ocean, not the breeze, something alive. You freeze, slowly turn your head. It's a pig. A small, wiry-haired pig with one ear flopped over like a busted satellite. It stares at you like it owns the island, then trots away without a word. Rude. You sit up, stretch, and try to convince your joints they still work. Your shirt smells like an old fishing net. You mentally prepare for another round of coconut combat, but then then remember yesterday's defeat. Not today. Today, you're gonna find treasure, or at least something resembling purpose. After choking down the last of your dry cereal, somehow even more flavorless than yesterday, you start wandering inland again. The trees part slightly, revealing a slope you hadn't noticed before. At the top, a rickety shack leans against the jungle like it's lost the will to stand upright. Vines crawl over its roof. The whole thing looks like a sneeze would collapse it. Inside sits a man, shirtless, shoeless, mostly toothless. He's ancient in that way where he might be 80 or 800. He doesn't look surprised to see you. Maybe because he saw you yelling at a coconut yesterday and decided to let natural selection do its thing. You raise a hand in greeting. I'm looking for treasure. He squints at you like you just asked if turtles can do algebra. Then he cackles. Loud, wheezy, full-body laughter. Sure, he says between coughs. Everyone comes looking. None leave richer. But here, take this. From a crusty drawer, he pulls out a folded, soggy piece of paper. You unfold it carefully. It's a map, sort of. More like a pirate doodle that lost a fight with a rainstorm. The ink's run, the corners are chewed, and half the excess looks suspiciously like accidental coffee stains. Follow it, the man croaks, and maybe you'll find something. Or maybe you'll find another map. Then he grins like that's the best joke he's told all year. You thank him, even though you're 80% sure he's just messing with you. Still, it's the most direction you've had since arriving. You take off down the path marked vaguely on the map, trying to match the lumpy trees to the squiggles. A few hours and many mosquito bites later, you reach a small creek. The map shows a bridge. There is no bridge. There's a log. You test it. It wobbles. You cross anyway, arms out, channeling tightrope walkers and circus clowns. Halfway across, a gust of wind tries to throw you off. You yell a very firm no at nature and somehow make it across. Just past the creek, tucked behind some ferns, you find it. Another map, just as waterlogged as the first, tied to a rock. No treasure chest, no dramatic lighting, just another challenge from the universe. You laugh again, a weird, high-pitched laugh that makes a nearby parrot fly off in alarm. Historians still argue whether pirates actually used detailed maps or if those iconic X marks the spot things were mostly Hollywood nonsense. Based on your experience, they probably just stumbled into treasure while trying to avoid scurvy. You examine the new map. It's even less helpful. No labels, just a sketch of what looks like a chicken and a crude drawing of a cave. You sigh. You look up at the sky. Seriously. You press on, because what else are you going to do? The trail winds deeper into the jungle. You start hearing things. Rustling, distant clucks, possibly that same pig from this morning humming to itself. Eventually, you reach a fork in the trail. No signs, no guidance. You pick left. Always go left in stories, right? Wrong. 10 minutes in, you find yourself in a marsh. It smells like feet and forgotten dreams. Your shoe gets stuck in the mud, and as you reach down to pull it free, your map falls in. You yell. The jungle doesn't care. You manage to retrieve it, now barely legible. Frustrated, you flop down on a rock that squishes slightly under your weight. You jump up. Not a rock. Turtle. A very annoyed turtle that gives you a look usually reserved for DMV workers and substitute teachers. You apologize and keep moving. Eventually, you stumble onto dry ground again. Your clothes are soggy, your morale is low, and you're starting to think Captain Spoon might have been the real treasure all along. Back at camp that night, you dry the maps near your fire, which you manage to start using 2 sticks, a shoelace, and a disturbing amount of muttered profanity, PG-13 of course. You stare at them, side by side, and notice something new. The corners line up, like a puzzle. Combined, they form a drawing of a fish, or maybe a lopsided dolphin. You're too tired to figure it out. You lie back, stare up at the stars, and wonder if that old man is watching you from his shack, laughing into the night. Wednesday greets you with a sudden downpour that sounds like the skies finally lost its patience. Your tarp does its best, but let's be honest, it was never built for success. You wake up soaked, shirt clinging to your chest like a needy octopus, and your socks squish when you move, which is tragic because you only packed 2 pairs. The fire's out, the maps are damp again, and Captain Spoon? Missing, gone, possibly kidnapped, probably rolled down the hill during the storm. You make a mental note to hold a small memorial later. You squint into the trees and whisper, "Okay, island, what next?" It doesn't answer, but the rain eases, and a glimmer of morning light slides between the clouds. You wring out your shirt and decide today is cave day. The sketch on the second map, if it is a map and not just someone's board scribble, clearly shows a cave beneath a sad-looking chicken. It's your only lead. You climb uphill through thick underbrush, tripping on vines and once, embarrassingly, on your own feet. At one point, you pause to watch a line of ants carry a dead beetle, teamwork goals in action. It's weirdly inspiring. You nod at them like you're proud. Historians still argue whether pirates used caves for actual treasure storage or just for hiding during storms. Some evidence supports secret stashes. Others suggest they were mostly romanticized by 19th century fiction. You're hoping for at least a shiny coin, or maybe just a dry spot. The climb gets steeper. A tree branch smacks you in the face. Twice. You start cursing softly at vegetation like it personally betrayed you. Finally, you crest a hill and see it. A rocky overhang with a dark hole yawning beneath the cave. And there, etched into the stone above the entrance, is a chicken. Not a majestic, fearsome bird of legend. Just a lazy-looking, lopsided chicken, scratched into the wall with all the menace of a doodle on a high school desk. You can't decide whether to be disappointed or charmed. Inside, it's cooler, almost pleasant. The floor crunches under your shoes, gravel, bits of shell, and the occasional very old fish bone. You click on your flashlight. The beam cuts through dust and shadows. The smell is a mix of damp stone and forgotten history. You edge forward slowly, one hand brushing the wall for balance. Deeper in, the walls narrow and you have to crouch. Your backpack scrapes the ceiling. A drop of something lands on your neck. You freeze. Look up. Just condensation, probably. After what feels like hours but is actually 12 minutes, you find a chamber. It's barely a room, just a widened pocket in the cave. But in the center sits a box. You blink. You step forward. It's definitely a box. Wood, iron bands, half buried in dirt. Your heart pounds. Is this it? Actual treasure? You reach down, hands shaking, and yank it free. You open it. Inside are rocks. Just rocks. Smooth, round, gray ones. A dozen, maybe more. Arranged carefully. On the inside of the lid, someone carved the word patience. You sit back and stare. It's not a trap. Not cursed. Just a box of rocks and a life lesson. Some long-dead prankster pirate probably sat here giggling to himself while carving that lid. Maybe he was teaching a lesson. Maybe he just liked rocks. You lie down on the cool cave floor and laugh. Not sad laughter. Just tired, confused. Of course that's what's in the box laughter. A bat rustles above you. You wave hello. The bat doesn't wave back. You spend some time just breathing in the silence. It's kind of nice. You realize you haven't looked at your phone in 3 days. You don't even know what day it is without counting the granola bar wrappers. But you feel different. You hold him high like a knight reclaiming a sword. The birds do not cheer, but in your head, there's applause. You return to camp, rebuild the fire, and eat some weird trail mix you forgot you packed. You stare at the box of rocks, now next to your tarp, and think about the message. Patience. You're not sure if it's advice or mockery, but either way, you're weirdly grateful. As you settle in for the night, the stars twinkle above and the breeze carries the faint sound of that wild pig again. You wonder if he's got treasure buried somewhere, or maybe just snacks. Thursday dawns in a strangely optimistic way, like the island decided to cut you some slack after yesterday's rock and patience revelation. The sun peeks over the horizon, casting a soft orange glow that makes the palm fronds sparkle like tiny disco balls. You blink, stretch, and almost forget you're still here, stranded, directionless, and apparently engaged in a prolonged staring contest with a coconut. Today's mission, reconnaissance. You're gonna scout the coastline to see if any ships are passing by. You haven't seen a single boat since you arrived, and your rescue radar is at 0. That, or your radar is broken. Probably broken. You pack up the now much drier tarp and sling Captain Spoon onto your belt, who's looking slightly less heroic but no less trusty. Your only weapons are your wits, a water bottle that's half full of suspiciously warm liquid, and the faint hope that the pig might have some insider info. As you trek along the beach, the sand beneath your feet is hot but bearable. You kick a rock. It doesn't move, but it's a good way to vent your frustration. You squint at the horizon, just endless blue water dotted with distant clouds.
No chips, no flares.
No SOS messages written in giant letters using palm leaves. But hey, there's always tomorrow. Suddenly, your foot sinks into something. You look down to see a tiny crab waving its claws like it's trying to signal a secret message. You salute back. This might be the closest you get to pirate communication for now. As you wander, you pass a series of abandoned beach huts. Their roofs caved in. Think of them as official troublemakers. Historians still argue whether this made them heroes or just criminals with paperwork. You squat next to one of the huts and find a weather journal half buried in sand. The pages are damp and brittle. You flip through it carefully. The handwriting is spidery, the ink faded. It reads like the diary of someone who lived here long ago, someone who spoke of storms, loneliness, and a strange obsession with finding the perfect coconut. You chuckle. Maybe you're not the first to be obsessed with coconuts around here, or to fail spectacularly at cracking them open. Further down the beach, you spot a narrow inlet, a secret passage formed by rocks and overhanging vines. It looks like the perfect spot for a hidden cove, maybe even a smuggler's hideout. You slide through and find yourself in a small lagoon. Its waters calm and clear, reflecting the sky like a mirror. You pause, breath caught, because it's beautiful. The kind of quiet beauty that makes you forget how long you've been stranded, and that treasure is still nowhere in sight. You wade into the water, the coolness a relief on your hot feet. Suddenly, something brushes your leg. You jump back, heart racing. It's just a curious fish shimmering silver in the sunlight. You laugh nervously. You're starting to think that maybe the fish are the true treasure here, graceful, free, and definitely not obsessed with coconut hydration. As you dry off and prepare to head back, you notice carved initials on a nearby rock, JC 1742, a reminder that countless people have been here before you, each leaving their mark in the sand or stone. You tuck the journal into your bag and make your way back to camp, feeling a little lighter, a little more connected to this weird, quiet place. The ocean calls softly, promising more mysteries tomorrow. That night, as you lie under the stars, you wonder if you'll ever find treasure or if the real reward is just surviving another day on this. Friday begins with a noise that should not exist on a deserted island. A honk, not a bird call, not the squeak of a wild pig, but a real, unmistakable honk. You sit bolt upright, hair sticking in all directions, heart pounding. Is it a boat? You sprint to the beach with all the grace of a sleep-deprived flamingo. But the shoreline is empty, just waves, your footprints, and that one crab who now looks offended that you ran past without saying good morning. The honk repeats, distant, echoing off the trees this time. You turn around slowly. Of course, it's coming from inland. You head toward the noise, ducking under vines and trying not to trip over roots like yesterday. The jungle is buzzing, literally. Mosquitoes throw a full-blown rave around your ears, and some distant parrot is practicing its stand-up routine. You keep moving, guided by the periodic, absurd honk. Eventually, you break through a wall of thick ferns and find it, a rusted-out, beat-up 1950s Jeep. In the middle of the jungle, covered in moss, a horn wire dangling like a limp spaghetti noodle, still twitching now and then. You blink, not sure if it's a mirage, a joke, or a bizarre crossover episode with Lost. Inside the Jeep, you find a few relics, a cracked compass, a leather satchel filled with faded papers, and, miraculously, an unopened can of condensed milk. You pocket the compass, sling the satchel over your shoulder, and eye the can suspiciously. You're desperate, but not milk jello from the 1950s desperate. Historians still argue whether early Caribbean explorers intentionally left gear behind for future travelers or just had a terrible grasp of inventory management. Judging by this jungle Jeep, it might be the latter. Back at camp, you lay everything out for inspection. The papers include faded maps, again with the maps, and a hand-drawn note reading, "Follow the twin palms. Dig beneath the sleeping rock." Vague enough to be useless, specific enough to give you hope. You compare it to your own two maps. The rock shapes, palm clusters, and landmarks look suspiciously similar. You chew on a piece of dried mango and try to decode it all like a sweaty Indiana Jones with no hat and way too many bug bites. After some pacing and dramatic staring into the distance, you commit to a plan. You're going to find the twin palms today. Worst case scenario, you get more steps in. Best case?
Actual triasure.
Or at least something better than rocks and cryptic notes. The map leads you to a high ridge that overlooks the island's interior. You climb slowly, your calves screaming, and finally reach the top. There, stretching out before you in all its overgrown glory, are two identical palm trees growing side by side, just like the sketch. Below them, a large, flat boulder covered in moss and lichen. "Sleeping rock," you whisper. You drop your bag, grab Captain Spoon, and begin digging. It's not glamorous. The dirt is hard, filled with roots and sharp stones. At one point, a millipede joins the excavation. You politely ask it to leave. It ignores you. You dig until your arms ache, until your knees are bruised, until you've created a hole large enough to qualify for a zoning permit. And then your fingers hit something. You scrape away more dirt, revealing wood. Not rotten, not ancient. A small, reinforced crate bound with rusted iron. You hold your breath. This time, it feels real. Not another joke. Not another philosophical message about patience or humility. You crack it open. Inside, glass bottles. Dozens of them. Each one filled with liquid and sealed tight with wax. Your heart sinks. Is this treasure? Really? You lift one. A label still clings to the glass, barely legible. Carrington's Spiced Rum, 1718. You stare at it. Then you grin. Not treasure in the gold and gem sense, but in the "this could pay rent back home" sense. Carrington's was a legendary distillery killer whose recipes were lost centuries ago. Collectors would probably fight to the death over even one of these bottles. You have a crate, quirky tidbit of the day. Some pirates actually accepted rum instead of payment. Historians still argue whether this improved morale or simply led to questionable decision-making on deck. You gather the crate, hoist it onto your makeshift sled, which you MacGyver together from driftwood and sheer desperation, and begin dragging it back to camp. That night, you sit beside your fire with one bottle in hand. You don't drink it, not yet. You just admire it in the firelight. For the first time all week, you feel victorious. Not rich yet, not rescued, but definitely victorious. Captain Spoon lies beside you, newly polished. The maps are safe, dry, and carefully refolded. The stars blink overhead, and the ocean whispers its approval. You toast the air. To patience, pigs, and really old rum. The jungle answers with a faint, distant honk. Saturday rolls in slowly, like it's politely checking whether you've recovered from the emotional roller coaster of yesterday's rum discovery. You wake to the scent of seawater and wood smoke, stretched out like royalty beneath your now expertly reassembled tarp fort. The crate of ancient rum sits beside you like a pet dragon, proud and slightly flammable. You're not even mad there's no gold. Honestly, at this point, a rare rum hoard might be better. You can't exactly drink doubloons, and let's be real, Caribbean rum aged in pirate-era barrels? That's the kind of treasure hipsters would auction kidneys for. You sip warm water, chew the last granola bar, RIP snack supply, and stretch like someone who hasn't slept in damp shorts all week. Today, you decide, is for celebration. And by celebration, you mean exploring the northern cliffs mentioned in one of the Jeep's maps. Because apparently you can't just relax with treasure, you have to chase more mystery. The hike north is brutal. Uphill, rocky, with trail markers that seem to actively mock you. At one point, a lizard scurries across your foot, and you nearly audition for a slow-motion fall off a ledge. You regain balance, dignity questionable, and carry on. About halfway up, you come across a strange structure embedded into the cliffside. Stone steps carved directly into the rock, spiraling upward. You squint. This wasn't on the map. You ascend slowly, hand on the wall, each step echoing hollow beneath your feet. At the top is a weathered stone platform, probably once part of a lookout post. There's no roof, just jagged pillars framing the sea like a postcard. Carved into one of them are the words, "He who climbs may fall. He who waits never knows." You nod like it's wise, but honestly it just sounds like a motivational quote from a pirate-themed Instagram account. Historians still argue whether these cliff posts were military lookouts or informal signal towers used by pirate crews to communicate across islands. Some claim smoke signals, others say reflective mirrors were used to flash messages. Whatever this was, the view alone is worth the climb. You sit on the edge, letting your legs dangle while the wind tugs at your shirt. The waves below crash like applause. Somewhere far out, you think you see a dot. A ship? Maybe. You blink. Gone. You make a note to climb up here again later, maybe try a signal fire if you can rig one. For now, you reach into your pack and pull out the crab journal. Page after faded page of someone trying to map the island and losing their mind in the process. On one page, there's a sketch of this very cliff. You hadn't noticed it before. At the base of the stone platform, the sketch shows an X. You scramble down. There, etched into the mossy stone between steps, is a tiny, barely visible groove. You clear the dirt and find a small, hinged metal box, rusted shut, stubborn as your high school gym locker. Captain Spoon, now part crowbar, pries it open with a triumphant squeal. Inside, a single coin, Spanish silver, tarnished but unmistakably real. 1600s, possibly minted in Seville. You stare at it, thumb its worn edges. It's heavy, real, not rocks, not rum.
Actual treasure.
You laugh just once, sharp and surprised. Quirky side fact, some pirates buried coins not for safekeeping but as bizarre rituals, offerings to superstitions or sea spirits. Historians still argue whether this was genuine belief or just dramatic flair. You pocket the coin and sit back against the stone. Treasure. You finally found treasure. Not enough to retire, but enough to validate every mosquito bite, every rain-soaked nap, every overly dramatic interaction with a coconut. The walk back to camp feels different now, like the island is less mysterious and more familiar. You know where the cliffs are, where the sleeping rock lies, where the jeep slowly rusts under a canopy of ferns. You're learning the island's language, bit by bit. At sunset, you sit by the fire, polishing the coin with a leaf. It gleams faintly in the firelight. Captain Spoon rests beside the crate. You break into the least dusty of your remaining snacks, Mystery Trail Mix number 4, and toast the air with a peanut. Cheers to Saturday, the best day of the week. Even here, the fire crackles, a bird whistles, a very loud frog somewhere nearby launches into a solo concert. You fall asleep with the coin in your pocket, Captain Spoon under your arm, and the vague hope that tomorrow, maybe, someone will spot your smoke signal from the cliffs. Sunday morning greets you like a cat that doesn't care if you exist, quiet, warm, and vaguely judgmental. The sky is smeared with pink and lavender, and the ocean hums its low, constant lullaby. You sit up slowly, back sore, hair a full-scale rebellion. You pat your pocket. Yep, the coin's still there. Not a dream, not a prank, one actual piece of pirate treasure. But Sunday, as it turns out, is not a day of rest. Not on this island. Because while your mind's doing happy little cartwheels about that silver coin, the sky decides it's time for Act 2, the rain sequel. It starts with a whisper of wind, then a dark smudge on the horizon. And before you can say, Captain Spoon, hold my rum, a full-blown tropical storm is barreling toward you like it wants to have a very loud conversation about waterproofing. You scramble. First priority, protect the rum. You lash the crate under your tarp with vines like it's about to be interrogated by the Navy. You shove everything else, maps, journal, coin, spoon, into your pack, pull the tarp tight, and dive inside just as the first fat raindrops slap the ground. Within minutes, your camp is a mudslide. Thunder cracks so close it rattles your ribs. The wind tugs at the tarp like it's trying to find out your skincare routine. You hunker down, drenched, tired, but weirdly calm. It's not your first storm here. Probably won't be your last. Somewhere in the chaos, you remember a weird fact. Ancient Caribbean sailors used to sing to storms. Deep, guttural chants meant to calm the wind or at least make them feel less powerless. Historians still argue whether this was spiritual tradition or just a clever way to coordinate bailing water off a deck. You hum a little, not exactly a chant, but close enough. Hours later, the storm eases. The rain slows, the clouds part. You crawl out like a soaked gremlin. The tarp held. Barely. Your rum is safe. Your pack is wet, but its contents are dry. Victory. Except, the beach is different. The storm didn't just drench everything. It rearranged it. Debris is everywhere. Branches, seaweed, and a very annoyed crab. But most interesting of all, something half-buried near the shoreline. You approach. It's large, rectangular, wrapped in thick ropes, with barnacles clinging to the side. A crate, a real one, sea-worn, heavy. You dig around it and slowly pry it open with, you guessed it, Captain Spoon. Inside is a waterlogged mess. Some broken glass, moldy cloth, and something wrapped in oilcloth. You pull it out. It's a book, leather-bound, the cover warped but intact. The spine reads S. Chandler, 1721. You blink. Chandler? Like the name in the crab journal? You flip through it, careful not to tear the fragile pages. It's another journal. Same style of writing. This one's older, more detailed. It's a log of a sea voyage, routes, weather, cargo, mutinies narrowly avoided. There are even sketches of anchor designs and knot techniques, including one charmingly useless one labeled Captain's Favorite, Don't Untie This. Quirky fact of the day, one lesser-known pirate punishment was marooning with poetry. Offenders were left on islands with nothing but food, water, and a rhyming journal of their misdeeds. Historians still argue whether this was cruel or hilariously petty. You read a section aloud. Day 43, we spotted the rocks of Devil's Curve. A storm nearly split the hull. Lost the starboard barrel of brandy. Men furious. Suggest replacing brandy with vinegar next time. Less temptation. You chuckle. Practical pirate logic at its finest. The sun returns, drying the sand and warming your back. You carry the crate and book to camp and sit down to read more. The journal includes a hand-drawn map, not of your island, but one nearby, marked with 3XS and a note. If lost, scatter the clues. Clues. You look up. The crab journal, the sleeping rock map, the bottle labels. This island might be just one in a chain of misdirection, a breadcrumb trail across the Caribbean. You should be discouraged, but you're not. Not really. The storm revealed something new. Maybe the island isn't hoarding its secrets. Maybe it's just waiting for the right gust of wind to hand them over. You patch up the tarp, dry out your clothes on a branch, and cook your weirdest dinner yet. Roasted mango and something that might be a yam. Possibly not. Possibly a root that'll give you dreams about tax audits. Either way, it's warm. That night, the stars come out with dramatic flare. No moon, just a spray of silver across the black sky. You lie back, journals tucked under your head, coin cool against your chest. Captain Spoon glints beside you, still loyal, still undefeated. Somewhere out there is a ship, a real one. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But for now, you drift to sleep to the sound of calm waves and a whisper in the back of your mind. Scatter the clues. You wake Monday to silence so complete it makes your ears feel weird. No waves, no birds, not even that one frog who's been passive-aggressively croaking at you every night like you stole his pond. Just hush, thick and still. It's the kind of quiet that makes your instincts stir, like the island is holding its breath. You rise slowly, brush off a few tenacious ants, and scan the horizon. The ocean's calm, like a painting. The jungle, unusually still. Not even the leaves are rustling. It's unsettling in a serene sort of way. You decide to take advantage of the break in the chaos and revisit the jeep in the jungle. You haven't fully explored the satchel you found there. Something about near death by storm shoved that task down the to-do list. Today, it moves to the top. You hike back through the ferns and vines, passing the exact same tree that tried to slap you in the face 3 times now. You give it a warning glare. Nature understands boundaries, right? When you reach the clearing, the jeep is still there, still hauntingly out of place, like a time traveler forgot to return it. You sit on the hood, open the satchel, and pull out the remaining papers. Most are too damaged to make sense of. Faded charts, scribbled notes in pencil, ink that's bled into itself like melting spiderwebs. But tucked in the back is something curious. A small, red leather-bound notebook, untitled. You flip it open. It's a list, a very precise, very organized list titled, Supplies stored near observation point. Use only if necessary. Below it, coordinates, instructions, and a cryptic postscript, guarded by the sister stones. Okay, that's new. You pull out your trusty compass, line it up with the sketchy map, and calculate the location. It appears to be east of the cliffs, just beyond a patch of dense jungle you haven't explored yet. A place you've been quietly avoiding because it looks hungry. But now, curiosity wins. And let's be honest, you're running low on granola and morale. If there's a cache of supplies out there, it's worth chasing. You grab Captain Spoon, strap the satchel across your back, and head into the jungle. The path vanishes almost immediately. Vines snag at your ankles. Weird fruit dangles overhead, looking like they dare you to touch them. Something furry and disapproving stares at you from a branch. You push forward. The air here feels thicker, swampier. The smell is richer. Wet leaves, sap, something faintly metallic. The canopy above lets in only slivers of light, turning the ground into a dim green mosaic. And then you see them, 2 identical boulders shaped eerily like massive heads. Eroded eyes, lopsided mouths, and a shared look of stony disapproval. Sister stones, no doubt. You search the area. 10 minutes pass. 20. Then, beneath a pile of leaves, a wooden hatch. You pry it open and peer down into a small root cellar lined with stone. Inside, a rusted metal box, several clay jars, a bundle of cloth, and something wrapped in waxed canvas. You haul everything out, one piece at a time. The metal box contains basic tools: a knife, flint, wire, an old tin whistle. The jars are filled with hardtack and dried something. Fruit, meat, questionable science experiment? You don't ask. You just thank the island gods and stash it all in your pack. The waxed canvas, though, that's the real treasure. You unroll it carefully and reveal a set of waterproof maps, more detailed than anything else you've found. Multiple islands, noted currents, pirate anchorages marked with tiny red dots. Historians still argue whether such pirate map networks were coordinated or simply a chaotic free-for-all of scribbled landmarks and loose legend. Judging by this set, someone had a system, and they were planning to come back. You sit with your back against one of the Stone Sisters, studying the maps until your legs go numb. There are islands you've heard of, and a few you definitely haven't, including one labeled No Return. Cheery, but one dot in particular catches your eye. It's near your current location, just offshore. A reef marked with a tiny icon that looks suspiciously like a key. You pack everything up, heart thudding. If this is what it looks like, if someone hit a key there, then maybe the coin, the rum, the journal, they're all part of something larger. You're not just surviving the week anymore. You're unraveling a legacy. You make your way back to camp, now nearly overflowing with odd treasures and unanswered questions. The coin, the rum, the books, the tools. You lay them out like a museum curator, each piece part of a larger puzzle you didn't know you were solving. Quirky tidbit: some pirate crews had secret air islands, places only the captain and first mate knew about, stocked with essentials, clues, or vengeance items. One theory, that they were decoys for their real loot, meant to mislead any pursuers. Historians still argue whether those stories were real or just romanticized tales told by bored sailors in port bars. That night, you sit by the fire with one of the dried fruits, tastes like mango plus regret, staring staring at the reef's mark on the map. The ocean's dark again, but peaceful. You can hear the distant call of birds heading to roost, and for the first time in days, you don't feel stranded. You feel like you're in the middle of something ancient and very much unfinished. Tuesday begins with the kind of sunrise that makes you momentarily forget you've been bathing with a bucket and sleeping next to a tarp that smells like damp socks. The sky is golden syrup, the waves whisper like gossiping ants, and the jungle birds are doing their best impression of a tropical orchestra warming up out of sync. You've got a plan today, a real focused adult plan. You're going to that reef. You tuck the journal, the coin, the red notebook, and the new maps into your waterproof pouch. Okay, it's a resealable bag that once held dehydrated lentils, but still, then tie it to your back. Captain Spoon gets an honorary spot strapped to your hip like the hero's blade it is. You're starting to wonder if you'll need to knight it soon. The reef is marked as about 200 yards offshore. Not far. The water is clear and calm today, perfect for a swim. You do a quick gear check, stash your tarp and extra supplies under some camouflaged palm fronds, and head toward the beach. Wading in, the water greets you like a friendly dog, cool, eager, and a little too clingy. You swim out, slow and steady, scanning the seabed below for anything unusual. Fish dart away like you owe them money, and you swear one eel gives you a suspicious squint. About halfway there, the reef rises like an underwater city. Jagged coral spires, fish in neon colors that look AI generated, and sandy pockets that might be hiding anything. Or nothing. You float above it, catch your breath, then dive. The first thing you notice is a cluster of rusted metal. Could be debris from a ship or just ocean junk. But then something catches your eye wedged between two coral ridges. A small metal box, square, weathered, clamped shut. You resurface, gasp for air, then dive again, this time with takes effort. Your hands scrape on coral, and you get momentarily stuck on some seaweed that is way too into personal space. But eventually, you wrestle the box free and kick up toward the light. Back on shore, you pop the latch. Inside is a velvet pouch, mildewed, sure, but still fancy. And when you open it, there it is, a key. Old iron and weirdly pristine. You half expect it to glow or start whispering riddles. It doesn't. It just sits there, smug and silent. You turn it over in your hands. No markings, no obvious lock it belongs to, but it feels important. This isn't just a key. It's the key to what? Unknown. But that's how Tuesdays go now. You stretch out under a coconut tree, the reef sparkling behind you, the jungle still brooding in the background, and think about everything that's happened. 1 week ago, you were just here to disconnect. Do nothing. Think nothing. You'd made peace with a boring trip. Maybe read a book, accidentally sunburn your knees, and head home with mosquito souvenirs. Now you've got a pirate coin, 2 old journals, multiple maps, a defiant kitchen spoon, and a key that may or may not unlock a centuries-old mystery. Your brain is buzzing. Your skin is sun-warmed. Your heart racing just a bit. Fun historical fact. During the early 1700s, Caribbean sailors used keystones, not actual stones, but symbolic tokens like engraved coins or etched compass plates that were passed among trusted crew as proof of identity and shared treasure rights. Historians still argue whether these were ceremonial or practical, or if they were just an excuse to throw elaborate loyalty parties with rum and sea shanty. You tuck the key into your pouch and return to your maps. You flip through the pages, cross-referencing symbols, notes, tide markings. One page draws your eye. It's got a sketch of a cave entrance, with the note, "Only opens when tide allows, guarded by roots and rock." You pause. There is a cliffside formation on the northern part of the island with twisted trees at its base. You passed it earlier in the week, thought it was just geological moodiness. Could that be it? You set off before you can overthink it. The trek takes an hour. Vines, bugs, and one deeply opinionated lizard stand in your way. But when you get there, the tide's low and the roots have receded enough to show a narrow crevice. You slide inside, using Captain Spoon to clear the way like a machete made of dreams. Inside, a small chamber, damp and echoey. At the back, a chest-shaped stone block with a keyhole. You freeze. Is this it? You take the key from your pouch, hold it up, and just to be safe, say something vaguely heroic like, "Well, here goes everything." It fits, turns. But instead of the chest opening, the entire wall shifts with a deep, grinding groan. A slab slides aside, revealing a staircase. Of course, because nothing's easy. You descend slowly, torch in one hand. Okay, a candle shoved into a coconut shell. Don't judge. And your heart thudding louder than your footsteps. The stairs lead to a chamber carved from the bedrock. It's cool and dry. Along the walls, there are more carvings, ships, stars, and one very familiar spoon emblem. There's a pedestal in the center with something covered in cloth. You step closer, pull it off. Not treasure. A logbook, thick, leather-bound. The spine reads, "Final record, Captain Elias Morrow. Collectors would probably fight to the death over even one of these bottles." You have a crate, quirky tidbit of the day. Some pirates actually accepted rum instead of payment. Historians still argue whether this improved morale morale or simply led to questionable decision-making on deck. You gather the crate, hoist it onto your makeshift sled, which you MacGyver together from driftwood and sheer desperation, and begin dragging it back to camp. That night, you sit beside your fire with one bottle in hand. You don't drink it, not yet. You just admire it in the firelight. For the first time all week, you feel victorious. Not rich yet, not rescued, but definitely victorious. Captain Spoon lies beside you, newly polished. The maps are safe, dry, and carefully refolded. The stars blink overhead, and the ocean whispers its approval. You toast the air. To patience, pigs, and really old rum. The jungle answers with a faint, distant honk. You're still sitting on the cold stone floor, holding Captain Elias Morrow's logbook in your hands. Around you, the chamber hums with quiet history, just damp enough to feel sacred, just dark enough to be dramatic. There's a single drip echoing from a stalactite somewhere, as if time itself is ticking softly in the background. You flip to the next page. If you're reading this, you're not one of mine. Or maybe you are and you're just very late. Either way, welcome to my insurance policy. You read on, transfixed. Morrow's handwriting is sharp and fast, full of sarcastic jabs and unexpected introspection. He writes of betrayals and storms, of buried alliances and lost ships. And buried beneath the wit is a deeper truth. He didn't trust anyone with his real legacy, not even his crew. That's what this cave is. A failsafe. They'll look for gold. I left stories. You close the book gently and glance around the chamber. Stories, huh? Along the walls, etched into the stone, are panels you hadn't fully noticed. Low-relief carvings, scenes of island life, of ships braving waves, of shadowy figures huddled over firelight. One shows a figure raising a spoon like a sword. You smirk. It's either a coincidence or you and Morrow have eerily similar senses of humor. You run your fingers over one carving that seems newer, sharper than the others. It shows a split map, a symbol over each half. One half matches your reef map. The other is an island shape you don't recognize. You pull out the leather-bound map bundle, flipping through, trying to match it. And there it is, tucked near the back. A sketch of an island shaped like a boot with a bite taken out of it. Marked only as Cradle K. You whisper it aloud. It even sounds mysterious. There's a note next to the map in Morrow's handwriting. If you want the whole truth, you'll need both halves. You sit back on your heels. So this was never meant to be the final stop. Just the middle chapter. Cradle K is the next clue. Maybe the last. But that's assuming it still exists and that you can get there. You close the book and tuck it gently into your satchel, suddenly aware of how precious it is. The island's heat feels less oppressive now, like the air is charged with a quiet electricity. You're no longer just surviving a dull vacation. You're carrying the last words of a pirate who outwitted his crew and buried his truth in riddles and jokes. You climb the stairs out of the chamber, squinting as sunlight hits your face. The tide's already creeping back in. The entrance won't be visible for much longer. Good timing. You trek back to camp with a strange lightness in your steps. The sun's high, the cicadas are screaming again, as always, and you feel something you haven't in days: momentum. Remember that ridiculous sunscreen made of crocodile dung the Egyptians used? Yeah, that's probably still preferable to whatever sunburn you're working on now. But even that can't ruin this moment. Back at camp, you sit under the tarp, drink the last of your rum ration like it's holy water, and spread the maps out once more. Cradle K. It's about 30 miles east, tucked into a cluster of mostly uncharted specks. The problem? You don't have a boat, or a raft, or anything remotely floaty, but you do have a lot of trees, and rope, and time. You spend the rest of the day sketching a plan in the sand. A raft. Nothing fancy. Nothing with sails or rudders or a snack bar. Just something that floats and won't immediately betray you to the sharks. Historical fact time. Early Caribbean explorers often built rafts from balsa wood and lashed palm trunks, especially when ships were wrecked or stolen. They called them paradas, and they were about as sturdy as wet cardboard but surprisingly effective when needed. Historians still argue whether most pirate crews actually used these, or if the records were exaggerated to make the survivors seem more rugged. Honestly, you're rooting for the rugged exaggeration. You'd like that legacy too. By sunset, you've gathered half the materials you'll need. Palm trunks, vines twisted into rope, driftwood. You even find a long plank that looks like it was once part of a dock or a ship. You name it the maybe floater. Captain Spoon gets duct taped to the front like a figurehead. You feel safer already. You collapse into your hammock that night absolutely filthy, absolutely sore, and absolutely certain of one thing. Tomorrow you're building your way off this rock. Not to escape, but to follow a story. As stars blink overhead and tree frogs strike up their nightly jam session, you reread the first page of Morrow's log. There is no treasure, just the truth. Find that, and you'll have more than gold. That's not exactly what you expected from a pirate. But then again, neither was this week. You wake up with a leaf stuck to your cheek, a sand crab aggressively eyeballing you from 2 feet away, and the delightful realization that you're building a raft today with no prior experience beyond watching 2.5 YouTube tutorials last year about survival watercrafts that quickly devolved into sponsored beard oil commercials. But hey, optimism. You stretch, check your materials, and begin. The process is equal parts engineering and chaos. Palm trunks are awkward and surprisingly heavy. Vines snap at inopportune moments. At one point, a rogue coconut drops directly next to your head, and you take that as either a warning or enthusiastic applause from the island. Hard to say. Still, slowly it comes together. For thick trunks make the base. Smaller driftwood fills the gaps. You lash everything with vines, over and under, again and again until your hands are raw and your shoulders scream. Then you step back. Your raft, dubbed the Floating Maybe, is a Frankenstein masterpiece of island desperation. It's lopsided, creaks when you poke it, and yet it floats. You tested it in the shallows using a large rock and a coconut for weight distribution science. Very advanced. You spend the afternoon reinforcing, tweaking, and preparing. You create a crude paddle using a plank and a shell. You rig a little sunshade using your tarp and some bamboo sticks. You even carve a tiny spoon symbol onto the side because at this point, you're all in on branding. And yes, you pack snacks. Priorities. As the sun dips low, you sit beside the raft, watching the sky bleed into shades of orange and lavender. The sea is quiet tonight, glassy, inviting. Cradle K lies out there somewhere, waiting. Now, let's pause for a moment and drop in some delightful historical flavor. Did you know that several pirates, including the infamous and Bonnie, were rumored to have stashed maps? You're not just chasing them, you're being watched. Lady Wen moves silently through the room, hands clasped. Her face is blank, but you know her well enough to see the storm brewing just behind her eyes. These people, they've been embedded longer than we thought. Historians still argue, you mutter aloud, whether the Tang bureaucracy was a well-oiled machine or a rotting tree dressed in silk. She cracks the faintest smile. You collect evidence, every scrap, seal, and codebook. The Forgery Academy is dismantled scroll by scroll. Some of it is so sophisticated, it frightens you. The seals alone, made from shaved bamboo, bound in resin, and pressed with teeth marks to simulate wear, are museum-worthy. You burn none of it. Instead, you repurpose. You launch a new training program dubbed, perhaps too enthusiastically, Forgery Awareness and Scroll Security. Ping insists on calling it FAST. The first lesson? Spotting brush pressure variations under candlelight. The second? What not to eat near important scrolls. Looking at you, dried plums. Officials grumble at first, but after 2 false scrolls are caught before they reach implementation, attitudes shift. Some even request extra sessions. You have to add a waiting list. Bureaucracy, it seems, has finally found its version of martial arts training. Meanwhile, back in Chang'an, something shifts. You receive an invitation to the inner palace. Not for questioning, not for punishment, for an audience, the emperor himself. You think it's a prank, or a trap, or both. But no, when you arrive, escorted past rows of peach trees and guards in armor that look ceremonial but definitely isn't, you find yourself in a quiet chamber with lattice windows and a sleeping crane painted across the floor. The emperor, in simple robes, looks up from a scroll. You made noise, he says, but it was useful noise. You bow so hard your spine cracks. He gestures for you to rise. I know about Zhou, about the Forgery Academy. You paddle in slow, steady strokes, following your compass and the crude coordinates sketched by Moro. There's a thrill in your chest, quiet but firm. It isn't gold you're chasing, something older, deeper. By midday, your arms are noodles and your sunscreen is more of a memory than a reality. You eat some cashews and try not to think about how much you miss chairs. That's when you see it. Cradle K, the smaller than your island. Narrow and curved like a cradle, so the name fits. Rocky at the ends, lush in the middle, with a sloping beach that looks suspiciously like a movie set. You drift closer, heart hammering. The map said to look for the tree with 2 shadows. You find it near the center of the beach, a gnarled palm bent sideways over a rock, its trunk split into 2 curved shapes that cast a perfect Y shape onto the sand. Beneath it, buried in shadow, is something strange. You hop off the raft and wade ashore. The sand is hotter here, the air still like it's holding its breath. You crouch beside the tree. Dig gently. Your fingers hit metal. Another box. No keyhole this time. Just a latch and a rusted hinge. You open it slowly. Inside, a bundle of papers wrapped in oilskin. A pendant with the same spoon crest engraved in it. And beneath them, a sealed envelope. On the outside, it reads, "To the one who finished my story." You stare at it. Whatever this is, it's the end. Or maybe just the truth. You sit down on the sand, the box in your lap, and take a long breath before opening the envelope. The envelope's seal crumbles like dry leaves between your fingers, and for a brief moment, you hesitate. You've made it all the way here, through sunburns, confusion, questionable water sources, and a serious lack of good coffee. And now you're holding the final message from a man who's been dead for centuries. No pressure. You pull out a single sheet of parchment. It smells like salt and age, and the handwriting is unmistakably Moro's. Slanted, chaotic, and somehow charming. So you made it. That either means you're incredibly clever, dangerously bored, or just a very lucky fool. Whatever the case, you deserve to know why you're here. The letter isn't long, but what it reveals bends everything you thought you understood. Moro never hid treasure because there was none to begin with. What he did hide was a story, his story, one he knew the world would twist into legend or forget entirely. He wanted someone to see him beyond the myths, to know the real choices he made, the mutiny he walked away from, the loyalty he lost, the price he paid to protect a secret that, in the end, wasn't about gold but guilt. They expected a tyrant or a madman or a thief. I gave them a story instead, and now you're part of it. You sit with that for a while, feeling the breeze brush the back of your neck. The pendant glints in the light beside you, heavy and simple. You slip it into your pocket without ceremony. It's not treasure. It's a footnote. The oilskin bundle turns out to be Moro's final journal entries, scribbled in the weeks before he disappeared from recorded history. You read slowly, stretched out under the bent palm, while the sun climbs overhead. One entry catches your breath. I buried the truth so someone would have to work for it. Not because it's valuable, but because it's fragile. Stories break when they're handed out too easily. I needed mine to survive the lazy and the greedy. You laugh quietly. Well played, Captain. You explore the island for hours after that, circling its small jungle, climbing a knoll on the eastern side to get a view of the surrounding sea. Nothing but blue and bird calls and a sky so vast you feel like a dot drawn on it. You find the remains of an old camp, weathered beams, a half-buried cookpot, and most surprisingly, a carved seat in the shape of a sea turtle. Someone spent serious time here. Maybe Moro. Maybe someone else chasing the same ghost trail. Historians still argue whether Moro died alone or staged his own death and lived quietly in exile. You could be standing in the answer and still never know. On the beach, you build a small fire and roast the last of your salted fish. You chew slowly, watching the sky blush with another sunset.
No fanfare.
No pirate ships on the horizon. No gold bars hidden under your feet. But you feel richer somehow. Here's a fun tidbit for the trivia bank. In the 17th century, Caribbean pirates often used conch shells not just as horns but as message containers, stuffed with notes, dropped in the shallows, meant for allies to find. One such shell was discovered in the Bahamas in the 1980s with a riddle carved into the inside. It led to absolutely nothing, but the mystery still drives people to search for a meaning. And that's sort of the point. You think about that as the stars return. Back at the raft, you check your supplies and make a decision. You're not leaving tonight. Maybe not tomorrow either. This place deserves more than a pit stop. So you string up your hammock between two trees and settle in. There's a peace here. No schedule. No cell signal. Just the quiet tick of wind through leaves and the steady pulse of waves meeting sand. A soundtrack of nothing in particular. You reread the envelope. Tell them what you found. Or don't. Stories only work if someone listens. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll turn this week into a bedtime story, told in whispers to sleepy listeners who think they know what treasure means. And maybe that's enough. You drift into sleep again, dreams flavored with sea spray and spoon crests and carved turtles. Your hammock rocks gently in the night breeze, swaying like a ship on calm waters. And somewhere in the dark, the island keeps its last secrets, content to stay quiet just a little longer. You wake to the sound of waves chuckling against the shore, like the sea's telling itself a joke you're not quite in on. The sun filters through your hammock, netting, dappled and warm. You stretch slowly, your muscles sore but satisfied, like they finally agree with your choices. You've made peace with the idea that this isn't about gold or even history. It's about the weird, beautiful honor of being the only person alive who knows exactly what Elias Moro left behind. After breakfast, a gritty mix of coconut, regret, and the last of your snack stash, you decide to explore one last time before heading back. You want to leave the island with a full picture, not just fragments. On the north side, you discover a patch of dense undergrowth concealing something unusual. Old stones arranged in a wide circle. Not natural. These were placed. Some are carved with faint symbols, knots, spirals, and one that looks suspiciously like a spoon if you squint and tilt your head like a confused dog. You kneel beside the largest stone and brush away dirt. More carvings. But unlike the others, this one isn't weathered, it's polished. Deliberately, the inscription reads, "Here ends the story they weren't ready for." You sit with that. Sounds like Moro knew no one would believe him, or maybe he didn't care. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, just hoping someone someday would listen. Historians still argue whether pirate captains had anything resembling spirituality, or if their ceremonies were just dramatic toasts and rum-fueled antics. But sites like this hint at something more. Rituals, memorials, maybe even quiet acts of preservation. You mark the spot in your journal, then place a stone of your own into the circle. A small one from the reef island. Full circle. You don't say anything out loud, it doesn't feel like the place for noise, but the moment hangs heavy and still, like the air is watching. Back at camp, you prep the raft again. Your plan is to navigate back to your original island, then signal for pickup using your emergency flare and the battery you've been saving for exactly this. The flare is tucked inside the raft's frame, right next to Captain Spoon. He seems ready too. You push off around noon. The sea's a little less friendly this time. Choppier, like it's annoyed you're leaving, but your raft holds. Every creek is familiar now. Every splash, a sentence in a language you've started to understand. You paddle, coast, rest, repeat. The sun does its dramatic descent, casting you in gold and shadow. You pass a curious sea turtle who eyes you like you're the weird one. Fair enough. And then, finally, you spot it. Your island, your home base, a blur of green and tan rising from the sea like an old friend waving you down. You land just as the last light disappears. You're sunburned, salt-crusted, exhausted, but you've made it. That night, you sit under your tarp for one last dinner of sadness jerky and filtered rainwater. You take out Moro's final pages again and read by flashlight. One sentence jumps out differently now. If you're still chasing gold, I hope you never find it. But if you're chasing meaning, then welcome. It lands harder now. You fall asleep to the chorus of frogs and bugs and that ever-present island breeze. It doesn't feel like survival anymore. It feels like closure. And you're almost sorry it's ending. Almost. Because there's one more thing you haven't told anyone. One detail you kept just for yourself. In the bundle Moro left, tucked into the back of the journal, was a folded sheet marked with one word, perhaps. You almost missed it. It was written in a different ink with lighter strokes. Inside was a list of coordinates, dozens of them, spread across the Caribbean, scattered like freckles. Each one labeled with a single word, echo. You don't know what they mean yet, but you smile, because maybe Moro didn't just leave a story. Maybe he left a trail of them. You close your eyes with that thought, and the waves keep whispering, as they always do, in a language just barely out of reach. Morning comes soft and pale, the sky a quiet wash of lavender and peach. You rise with it, slower now, deliberate. No rush. The pressure to solve, to chase, to discover. It's dissolved into something calmer. You've done the thing. You've become part of a secret that stretches across centuries and salt water. Today, you set up your signal. With the last bit of energy in your overworked body, you drag driftwood into a giant X on the beach, the most stereotypical distress beacon you can imagine, and yet weirdly fitting. Then, at noon, when the light is just right, you fire the emergency flare. A sharp hiss, a flash of red against the open sky. It arcs high and disappears into the blue. Now you wait. You spend the afternoon combing the beach, collecting your things, tidying the area like you're closing up a campsite for the next traveler. Not because you expect someone to find it soon, but because someone might. Someday. You find a smooth piece of coral and carve a small note into it. Moro lives. No gold. Just stories. You leave it under your tarp before collapsing back into your hammock, sipping the last of your water. And that's when you hear it. A distant, unnatural hum. At first you think it's the wind, but it grows. Louder, steady, mechanical, a seaplane. You stumble out to the shore, waving your arms like a cartoon castaway, and to your disbelief it circles once, then begins its descent. Within minutes, your rescue is real. Real people, real voices, questions, blank stares as you try to explain, in half-sentences and salt-caked rambles, about journals and keys and Cradle K and a pirate who didn't believe in gold. They don't quite get it, but they don't need to. They fly you back across the Caribbean, and from the window you look down at the endless water, seeing not just blue but coordinates, echoes, possibilities. Each wave a whisper from the past you now understand just a little better. You feel the weight leave your shoulders now, the light of the fire fading, the last embers of the journey sinking into your bones in the gentlest way. Your raft is docked. The island is behind you. The sea still stirs, of course, always there, always waiting. But tonight you're here, safe, still. Soften your breath. Let your fingers rest. No more paddling. No more puzzles. Just the sound of waves, far off and soft, like a lullaby written in tide. Let your eyes drift closed. The map is folded away. The story waits. And somewhere in the dark, a spoon-shaped crest gleams in moonlight, keeping quiet watch over the dreams it left behind.